This is When You Were Everything, chapter London, pages 326 to 329. London. Sloane was standing there, just in front of me, staring at her phone. She hadn't seen me yet where I was perched on the stairs behind her. But the second I started gathering my bags, she looked in my direction. I stood up quickly, still planning to turn and run away from them. But she rolled her eyes, tapped Layla's shoulders, and pointed at me before I could make my escape. "Oh, God, Elle," she said, sounding bored. "Look who it is." If I hadn't been having a lovely day all on my own, maybe I could have let the dismissal go. But I'd found gifts and had delicious hot chocolate, and people watched. And here she was, ruining the happiest few hours I'd had in months. So I didn't. I settled my bags back on the steps and looked right at her. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" I said. "Ugh, nothing. It's just that you're everywhere, like a cockroach." Oh, no, she did not. "Geez, Sloane, what is your problem with me?" I asked, and my voice sounded annoyed and pleading all at once. Her vitriol couldn't all be because of the Halloween party. The more I thought about how awful she'd been to me, the less I understood. Sloane crossed her arms. "You still don't get it, do you? I don't have a problem. I just don't like you. And frankly speaking, Layla doesn't either." I was shaken, even though I shouldn't have been. I felt a pain in my stomach, quick and sharp like a blade of truth. Layla looked guilty for a split second, before her face contorted into an expression I'd never seen her make before. It almost looked like pride, but it was a twinge darker than that. Layla looked self-satisfied. Layla almost looked smug. "It's true," Layla said. She jutted out a hip and twirled a piece of her hair. "I don't." Sloane laughed. "Tell her about London, Elle," she said. I swallowed hard, and my eyes slid from Sloane's face to Layla's and back again. "London?" I asked. What could she have to tell me about London? But then Layla started talking. "Miss Novak wrote me a recommendation for the Shakespeare summer program, too, you know. The one at the Globe in London." This was a turn in the conversation I hadn't expected. My eyes traced Layla's face. Slowly, I felt my hands start to shake, so I squeezed them into the tightest fists I could make and shoved them hard into the pockets of my coat. "Why would you even apply to it?" I asked. "There's a young actors' summer school, just like there's a young scholars' one. I applied when you did. But I wanted it to be a surprise, that I'd be coming with you if, by some miracle, I got in." I knew exactly where this was going, and even though everything in me was screaming, "Run," I was rooted to the spot in front of her. I had to hear it out loud to believe it could be true. "After you said what you said, I asked Novak if I could withdraw my application. I didn't want to chance it, getting in and being stuck there with you, but she said it was too late." Sloane was loving every second of this. So were Sage and Melody and Cadence, who were suddenly there too. They were surrounding me like we were a fistfight waiting to happen. But Layla and I had only ever been a war of words. "I wasn't going to tell you," she said, "because Novak told me you didn't get in and that you were totally disappointed. But I guess the head of the program was really moved by my statement of interest." Sage crossed her arms, and Melody and Cadence looked at each other, grinning, like the words Layla was saying were lyrics to their favorite song. I could feel it getting harder and harder for me to breathe, harder and harder for me to listen, to keep my mind where my body seemed to be stuck. The girls, they turned into monsters around me, and the park turned into my own personal hell. I was surrounded by flames, hot and burning, and there was no way out. In my statement, I told them, and I stuttered, but that I'd gotten the lead part in the school musical, that I knew I'd probably stutter on stage, but that I was doing it anyway. They weren't moving, but it felt like everything was closing in on me, and my heart was breaking all over again. I knew what Layla would say next, but I still wasn't ready to hear the words. I got in, Cleo. I'm going to London this summer. As she'd been talking, my eyes had filled with tears, and at the sound of those words I blinked, and it all spilled over. Layla started crying too. I knew it was because she cried when she was angry, but I convinced myself, just for a second, it was because she felt as awful as I did. She wiped the tears away, hard and fast. Sloane put her arm around her shoulder, but Layla didn't stop glaring at me. Her dark eyes were the same ones I'd looked into for years. Even with the makeup she was wearing and with the super straight hair, her eyes still looked the same. When she spoke, though, she was new Layla, a complete stranger. I'm so glad you won't be there, she hissed. And then I was completely broken. Then I was gone.